my role is the individual development analyst side. So that's the bit that kind of the typical analyst working with players, coaches, that's the bit that really gets my juices flowing, really. So on a Monday morning, or with the under 18s, because their schedule's week to week, or the first day back in for the B team, I'll sit in their multidisciplinary team meetings, and then like we kind of go through each player one by one and just see what their needs are. So like I'm always keeping a keen ear to see which players need extra analysis this week. Is there any players that the whole team of the multidisciplinary team are targeting that I feel that I can help in any way? This happens across from our under 9s all the way through to the B team, is that all of the departments, so whether that's analysis, coaching, psychology, medical, sports science, can't remember if I said them, player care, like kit and equipment, like everybody gets involved in these meetings just to make sure that we have a all-round view on each player. So this example that I've got, like this is something that we were discussing in B team MDT. So it's like basically we had a player who when he gets into a specific area of the pitch, he doesn't speed up with the ball. So like one of the questions that was asked would be, is he going to be able to run the speed of in the Premier League? So almost that's like a potential piece. Like that sort of question alone is almost like, is that a physical thing? Is it a tactical understanding thing? So I suppose the sports scientists in there will be like, oh, okay, has he got the physical potential? So then the questions, they won't get answered in that moment, but we'll go away as a team. And in this case study example, like the sports scientist went away and created an amazing gym program for this lad to make sure that he, in these moments, he is running with the ball like at speed as physically he can do it. And I suppose the question that like rings alarms to an analyst or a coach is like, is it a lack of tactical understanding? So in this example, we sat down with the lad, we showed him examples of when he hasn't done it, examples of when the top elite players, so his role model is Kevin De Bruyne, so showing him clips of Kevin De Bruyne doing it and the importance of it, showing him examples of our first team doing it, because obviously in our academy we play the same way as our first team. So in that moment we're basically saying like, this is really important, you need to be able to do it. We're not saying that you can't do it, but we need to talk about times when you should be doing it in the game and stuff like that. So and then in this case study, we were very lucky that the lad ended up like in games, like, so our sports scientist, he in the under 18s, he codes the games using iCoder live for any physical actions. So like if he sees like something really good physically, so he was looking out, and I remember both of us being sat there like absolutely buzzing, both pressing buttons, coding, like, yes, he's just finally doing it. So at no means would I say that it was all me, and hopefully he would say the same and say it's not all him, but as a collective, I suppose that's what these MDTs are about, is that we're all pushing in the same direction just to improve the player, really.
Just give us an overview before you had Pixellot technology across the training ground at Southampton Football Club, what you had in place before Pixellot, and I guess how Pixellot has helped you elevate across this season in different ways.
Yeah, so in terms of the way we use Pixellot, so when for away fixtures, so the talent centre that I just mentioned then, so because our catchment is C, we're allowed to have a Bath regional centre and a London regional centre. So at those sites, because they're not our training ground, before we'd have to have an analyst that was out there and would have to do a manual filming using like a vantage point where like you can move left and right. Whereas I suppose the Pixellot cameras are great because we've upskilled our coaches at both those centres to set it up, and then they can travel around the country remotely and they can film the games themselves and analyse the games themselves. And then our other location for Pixellot is at us, almost like we've got like a relationship with a club called AFC Tottenham, which is like a local team where our women's team, B team and under 18s play. And we got to the point where we were all right in lockdown because there were no fans in the ground, but we were basically filming in a health and safety walkway, like a fire exit, and we weren't allowed to film there anymore. So the next best was in the way of fans. So we basically needed to come up with a way of one solution was a gantry, but like, I mean, why would we go for a gantry and have someone filming when we can use a Pixellot camera, which can take one less person out of it and get two people analysing the game? And I suppose from what we've experienced, the footage is probably better than what we were filming because it's from a higher vantage point at the top of the stand. So,
what is the top tips that you can give to a young coach to adopt some of the methodologies that you clearly do at the club, and obviously do it very successfully from the back history that you've got at the club? What are the kind of main sort of tips that you'd like to give everyone out there?
I think the three for me, one of them is about like building those relationships, like I said at the start, but from a coach to analyst, like everything that we do at the club, I think we've been lucky, like when I first came in, that there was already the foundations of really good coach analyst relationships. But I think without those, like, you can't instill any processes, you can't use video in good ways. Like the ways that we use video, like just off the top of my head, so we have A teams, B team players leading opposition meetings. If you don't have that relationship with the coach, because the coach really wants to tell the players exactly what it is, then we can't affect the players in the way that we want to. Or in our under 16s, we do loads of sessions in the dome with a TV screen pitch side. So we've got a feed coming down from the camera that when the players are doing technique analysis, we can, when the drinks breaks, we can bring them in. The coach just quickly sits down, goes through the clips with the player. But without that relationship, again, we wouldn't be able to do it. Another one is probably about making sure it's age specific. So again, I've touched on bits, but we don't do stuff in the B team. We don't do stuff in the under 10s that we would do in the B team. Just purely, that sounds obvious, but I think some coaches like to think, oh, that looks really good what they're doing. Because I want to do it, I'll do it. It doesn't matter what age group I work with. But again, just going back to what is the player's needs, like letting kids be kids at the right age and stuff like that. And then the last one is just about giving players ownership. So it's great to have games filmed. Like, I think, me being biased, like in a non-league setting, I think we've got to an age where with like yourselves, that teams have no excuse to not film their games because you don't need anybody to actually film it anymore. I think giving players the ownership, they'll only learn more. And I think once they understand why they're doing it and stuff like that, the steeper their development, and we'll have more self-driven players as a collective across the world, really.